Chapter 3, Creating and Styling Web Forms. In this chapter, Opoundo using web forms to get information. Opoundo creating a form. Opoundo using CSS to style a form. Web forms enable your site to gather information from users. This chapter discusses web forms in all their glory and shows you how to both create a form and how to style it with CSS. Using web forms to get information. With web forms, like the one shown in figure 3:1, you can gather information from users. Using web forms to get information. Web forms can collect anything from name and email address and a message, like the one shown in figure 3:1, to images and files from your computer. For instance, when you log into your web-based email account, like Gmail, you're filling out a form with your username and your password. Here goes a look at how you can use HTML to create web forms. Understanding web forms. When you fill out a form, the information is sent to the web server. What exactly the web server does with the information is up to the programs running on the server. For example, when you fill out the contact form on my website, the server emails the information emailed to me, but when you fill out a form to find hotel rooms on a Hotelico's website, the server looks in its database for matching rooms based on the dates that you fill out. In Book 6, you work with server-side programs to process web forms. For now, focus on the forms themselves. In HTML terms, forms are created with the form element. Forms open with form and close with /form, as in this example. Form action equals OCO #OCO. Input type equals OCO text OCO name equals OCmail address OCO. Input type equals OCO submit OCO name equals OCO submit OCO. /form. You see how to create your own form in the next section. Looking at form elements. There are many ways to get input through a form, each with its own specific name or type of input. The code example in the preceding section includes 2 input types, a text type and a submit type. The text type creates a box where the users can enter information. The submit type creates a button that users use to send the information to the server. There are many other types of input elements in a form, including these. Opound drop-down or select creates a drop-down box with multiple choices, from which the user can pick one. Opound checkboxes creates one or more boxes that the user can select. Opound radio buttons creates one or more small buttons, of which the user can select only one. Opound others. There are other specialty types OCO including password, text, area, and file OCO that enable you to gather other types of input from the user. Using web forms to get information 171. You've already seen the basic form elements, but there goes more to creating forms than just adding elements. Forms need to be integrated with other HTML in order to display like you want them to. Beyond that, as you see later in the chapter, you can also style forms with cascading style sheets. CSS. But for now, work on building a simple form. Figure 3:2 shows a web form using 2 text input types. Figure 3:2. A basic web form with the HTML used to create this form is shown here. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title a basic form /title. /head. Body. H1 a basic form /H1. HR. Form action equals OCO #OCO. Field set. Legend form information /legend. div. Label for equals OCO name /label. Input ID equals OCO type equals OCO text OCO name equals OCO /div. div. Label for equals ocmailaco email address / label. Input ID equals ocmailaco type equals oco textaco name equals ocmailaco. /div. /field set. /form. /body. /html. Creating a form. Up until the first form tag, the HTML is all stuff you've already seen. Earlier in this book, the form begins with that opening form tag. When you create a form, you use two attributes fairly often, one of which is the action attribute. The action attribute tells the form where to go or what to do when the user clicks submit. You see another attribute, method, a little later. The next element found in the form is field set, which is optional for a form. The field set element is used primarily for layout and accessibility. The next element found is the legend element. This element creates the form information legend and the box that, though difficult to see in the screenshot, surrounds the inputs in the form. Like field set, the legend element is entirely optional. Next in the form are the div elements used to create each row of inputs. The label element ties the friendly name oco what you see on the screen. In this case, name oco to the actual input. The label element is optional, but recommended because it helps with assistive technologies. Below the label element you see an input element. This div label input structure is repeated for the email address field. Creating a form. With some understanding of how forms are structured, it goes time to look at creating one with some of the elements already discussed. In this section, you find out more about the form element and how to create text boxes, drop-down boxes, check boxes, and radio buttons that visitors to your website can use to enter information. You also find out how to create a submit button, which lets visitors indicate that they are ready to transmit that information to you. All about the form element. You already saw that the form element commonly uses a couple different attributes, action and method. The action of a form typically points to the server program that will handle the input from the form. It goes where the form sends its data. If the action tells the form where to send the data, then the method attribute tells the form how to send the data to the server. There are two primary methods that you'll encounter, get and post. The get method is appropriate for small forms, whereas the post method is appropriate for larger forms or ones that need to send a lot of information. Creating a form 173. Knowing the difference in the get and post methods. When you use a get method, the form oco's contents are sent as part of the URL. In the sample form that you saw earlier, the URL would end up being something like http://localhost/form1.html ? Username equals Steve and email equals steve@example.com. Can get. Many browsers, like Internet Explorer, only allow a certain number of characters in the URL, so if your form or the data being sent is too long, then it won't work. When you use a post, there is no such length restriction set by the browser. It is important to note, though, that the user can still see the form oco's data and how it will be sent to the server. You cannot hide that from the user no matter which method you use. The first thing you notice is that a user can easily see all the form elements, including their names and values, right in their browser oco's address bar. Beyond that, though, there is a practical limitation in just how long that URL. For most forms, I use post unless there is a specific reason to use the get method. When the action is set, as you've seen, to the pound sign or hash mark. Hashtag, the form essentially goes nowhere and does nothing, which for now is exactly what you want because you haven't built a server program to work with the incoming data yet. Adding a text input. You've already seen text inputs in this chapter. Adding one is as simple as using the type of OC text echo. You can also add a couple more handy attributes. Size and max size, which tell the browser how large to make the text box on the screen and the maximum amount of characters that are allowed in the field. For example, input type equals OCO text echo name equals OCO name echo size equals OCO 20 OCO max size equals OCO 30 OCO. This HTML creates a 20 characters wide input box, and the most that someone could enter into the box is 30 characters. Another attribute that you might see is the value attribute, which pre-populates the field with the value you provide. Consider this example. HTML. Input type equals OCO text echo name equals OCO name echo value equals OCO name here echo. Adding that to the form from figure 3 to 2 results in a form like the one shown in figure 3 to 3. Notice the value in the name field is now set according to the value property in the input definition. Figure 3 to 3. Adding a value to a. Adding a drop-down box. A drop-down box, also known as a select box, presents many options, from which the user can select one. An example is a list of states, such as Alaska, California, Wisconsin, and so on, where the user typically chooses one from among the list. The drop-down box provides a good way to display that information. You create a drop-down using the select element along with option elements, like this. Select name equals OCO. Option value equals OCO California / option. Option value equals OCO Wisconsin / option. /select. Here is a full form with a drop-down added to it. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title of basic select / title. /head. Body. H1 of basic select / H1. HR. Form action equals OCO hashtag OCO. Field set. Legend form information / legend. Creating a form 175. div. Label for equals OCO state / label. Select ID equals OCO name equals OCO. Option value equals OCO California / option. Option value equals OCO Wisconsin / option. /select. /div. /field set. /form. /body. /HTML. When IDECO is viewed in a browser, you get a page like that shown in figure 3 to 4. Figure 3 to 4. Creating a select drop. When a drop-down box is displayed, the first element is the one that shows up as the default. In the example shown in figure 3 to 4, California is displayed as the default option. You can, however, change the default value in 2 different ways, as discussed here. Like text boxes, you can set a default value for a drop-down box. This is accomplished using the selected attribute, though not always required. IDECO is a good idea to set a value for the selected attribute, as in this example. That would change the default value to Wisconsin. Select name equals OCO. Option value equals OCO California / option. Option selected equals OCO selected OCO value equals OCO Wisconsin / option. /select. Another way to set a default value of sorts is to set a blank option as the first option in the list. While this is not technically a default value, it shows up first on the list, so IDECO show as the default option when a user loads the page. A common way you'll see this is to use OC selective value or similar wording as the first option, indicating to the user that there occurs some action required, as shown here and in figure 3 to 5. Select name equals OCOSTATIACO. Option value equals OCOCO selective value, / option. Option value equals OCOCO California / option. Option value equals OCOIACO Wisconsin / option. / select. Figure 3 to 5. Setting the first value for a. Using the selected attribute overrides the first value trick shown in this example. Creating checkboxes. Another way to represent multiple values is by using checkboxes, where drop-downs are good to represent multiple values when there are a lot of options. Checkboxes are good to represent multiple values when there are just a few options, as might be the case when building a form for choosing pizza toppings. When someone adds pizza toppings, she can choose more than one on her pizza, but there usually are not too many toppings. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title checkboxes / title. / head. Body. H1 checkboxes / H1. HR. Form action equals OCO #OCO. Creating a form 177. Field set. Legend pizza information / legend. div toppings, br/. Input type equals OCO checkbox OCO ID equals OCO sausagiaco. Name equals OCO toppingsico value equals OCO sausagiaco. Label for equals OCO sausagiaco sausage / label br/. Input type equals OCO checkbox OCO ID equals OCO papaco. Name equals OCO toppingsico value equals OCO papaco. Label for equals OCO papaco pepperoni / label br/. Input type equals OCO checkbox OCO ID equals OCOMUSHOCO. Name equals OCO toppingsico value equals OCOMUSHOCO. Label for equals OCOMUSHOCO mushroom / label br/. /div. /field set. /form. /body. /HTML. This HTML creates 3 checkboxes in a group called OC toppingsico. The resulting page is shown in figure 3 to 6. Figure 3 to 6. Using check boxes for. Notice in the HTML that each checkbox has the same name attribute but uses different value attributes and different ID attributes. The ID attributes need to be unique in order for the HTML to be valid, and for the labels to work correctly. The name is the same because the checkboxes are actually grouped together. They represent one type of information, pizza toppings. In practice, you may see checkboxes without name attributes or with a different name attribute for each checkbox. The example you see here is one that keeps the information logically grouped, which makes it easier to maintain later and also makes it easier to work with in a server program, as you see later in this book. Using radio buttons. Radio buttons are used where there are multiple values but the user can choose only one from among those options, as would be the case with the type of crust for a pizza. The crust can be thin or deep dish OCO but not both, or the pizza would be a complete mess. Here OCOs the HTML to create radio buttons. Notice that the HTML is not really all that much different than the checkbox example. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title radio / title. / head. Body. H1 radio / H1. HR. Form action equals OCO #OCO. Field set. Legend pizza information / legend. div crust, br/. Input type equals OCO OCO ID equals OCO di poco. Name equals OCO crustico value equals OCO di poco. Label 4 equals okodi poko deep dish slash label br slash. Input type equals okaradio oko ID equals okatinico. Name equals oko crustico value equals okatinico. Label 4 equals okatinico thin slash label br slash. Slash div. Slash field set. Slash form. Slash body. Slash HTML. When viewed in a browser, the result is like that in figure 3-7. Like checkboxes, radio buttons have the same name but use different value and ID attributes. Like checkboxes, radio buttons use these values for the same reasons. With radio buttons, the name attribute is even more crucial. Radio buttons that share the same name attribute are in the same group, meaning the user can choose only one of the options in that group. If you want the user to be able to choose more than one option, then you should probably be using a checkbox. However, you can use more than one radio button group on a page. Just use a different name for the new radio button group and the user will be able to select from that group too. Creating a form 179. Figure 3-7. Radio buttons on A. Submitting and clearing the form. Thus far, you've seen some of the input types that you can use on a web page to gather information. The really big glaring piece missing from your knowledge is how to actually submit the form or send it to the server for processing. That is accomplished with another input type called submit. Input type equals oko submitaco name equals oko submitaco. Value equals oko process requestico. For example, consider this example, where a submit button is added to a form that you saw earlier in the chapter. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title a basic form slash title. Slash head. Body. H1 a basic form slash H1. HR. Form action equals oko hashtag oko. Field set. Legend form information slash legend. div. Label 4 equals oko urnamiaco name slash label. Input type equals oko textico ID equals oko urnamiaco name equals oko urnamiaco. Slash div. div. Using CSS to align form fields. Label 4 equals ocmailico email address slash label. Input type equals oko textico ID equals oko urnamiaco name equals ocmailico. Slash div. div. Input type equals oko submitaco name equals oko submitaco. Value equals oko send form oko. Slash div. Slash field set. Slash form. Slash body. Slash HTML. This HTML results in a page like that in figure 3-8. Figure 3-8. Adding a submit. Another button that you see on forms is a clear or reset button. The reset button clears the input and resets the form, removing anything the user has placed into the form. Adding a reset button is as simple as adding an input type of OC_stoko. Input type equals okarizataco name equals okarizataco value equals oko clear form oko. Using CSS to align form fields. The form examples you've seen so far have been pretty boring, just plain HTML with no alignment or visual appeal. Forms are just standard HTML, so they can be styled using CSS. This section looks at how to do just that. The example you'll see in this section uses CSS right within the HTML file. This is done for simplicity. When aligning form fields, the key is to use well-structured HTML. The HTML that you've seen so far in this chapter fits the bill, and so aligning the form fields will be rather easy. In fact, using the HTML from the final example as a guide, merely adding the style information to the head section aligns the fields. Style type equals OCO text slash XOCO. Dot form field. Clear. Both. Padding, 10px. Width, 350px. Dot form field label. Float, left. Width, 150px. Text align, right. Dot form field input. Float, right. Width, 150px. Text align, left. Slash style. The result is shown in figure 3 to 9. Each of the style rules match using a CSS class, and, in the case of the label and input, a child selector is further used to narrow the application of the CSS rule. Figure 3 to 9. Aligning form fields. But wait. The send form button is now stretched to 150px wide and the text OC_send form OCO is aligned to the left side of the button. Oops, looks like that echoes exactly what you asked for. Dot form field input. Float, right. Width, 150px. Text align, left. You need a way to either make that button smaller or at the very least to align the text in the center of it. Steve personally likes bigger buttons. They make it easier for users to click or tap if they are using a mobile device. So, we're choosing to align the text in the center but leave the button the same size. Aligning it in the center means adding something to the submit button OCO's HTML in order to be able to access it within the CSS. The easiest way to do that is by adding an ID attribute to the submit button, like so. Input ID equals OCO submitaco, type equals OCO submitaco, name equals OCO submitaco. Value equals OCO send form OCO. Here OCO's the CSS to add. Hashtag submit. Text align, center. The result is shown in figure 3 to 10. Figure 3 to 10. Aligning the text of the submit using CSS to align form fields. 183. The full HTML and CSS are shown here. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title a basic form / title. Style type equals OCO text / XOCO. Dot form field. Clear, both. Padding, 10px. Width, 350px. Dot form field label. Float, left. Width, 150px. Text align, right. Dot form field input. Float, right. Width, 150px. Text align, left. Hashtag submit. Text align, center. /style. /head. Body. H1 a basic form /H1. HR. Form action equals OCO hashtag OCO. Field set. Legend form information /legend. Div class equals OCO form field OCO. Label for equals OCO or name OCO name /label. Input type equals OCO text OCO ID equals OCO or name OCO name equals OCO or name OCO. /div. Div class equals OCO form field OCO. Label for equals OCmail OCO email address /label. Input type equals OCO text OCO ID equals OCO or name OCO name equals OCmail OCO. /div. Div class equals OCO form field OCO. Input ID equals OCO submitaco type equals OCO submitaco name equals OCO submitaco. Value equals OCO send form OCO. /div. /field set. /form. /body. /html. Gracias por escuchar audio buscar lo pasamos a JavaScript. Book 3. JavaScript. For more info on JavaScript, go to www.dummies.com/extras/php MySQL. JavaScript MEL 5 Chapter 1. Understanding JavaScript Basics. In this chapter, Opoundo understanding JavaScript echo's role in web programming. Opoundo adding JavaScript to a page. His mini-book is all about JavaScript and its place in building web applications. JavaScript is a very powerful language, and you can use it to add great features to enhance the user experience. In this chapter, we tell you a little bit about the types of interactivity that you can add to a web page with JavaScript and then show you how to add JavaScript to a page. In the next chapter, we show you how to use JavaScript to perform some very basic programming functions, and then we follow that with a look at more practical items with JavaScript. Viewing the world of JavaScript. JavaScript is used for web programming to enhance or add to the user experience when using a web page. This section looks at some of the aspects of JavaScript that will help you understand the language and give you a good foundation upon which you'll be able to really make your web pages stand out. JavaScript is no-code Java. Don't be confused by the name. JavaScript has absolutely nothing to do with Java Oko the coffee or the programming language. JavaScript Oko's name came about because marketing folks wanted to latch onto the OC factor. Back when the Java programming language was shiny and new. Java is a heavy language that doesn't necessarily run on every one Oko's computer. People have to install extra software to get it to run. Although powerful, Java is not meant for the types of web programming that you usually need to do. JavaScript, on the other hand, is included with just about every web browser and doesn't need anything else installed. You use JavaScript to make the pages come alive, with auto-populating form fields, and all kinds of bells and whistles that enhance the user experience. Examining the ways to add JavaScript to a page. One of the most common things that we hear from non-technical folks is confusing or calling JavaScript Java.oko. Now that you know that the two are completely different, you want to do the same. You will, however, need to resist the urge to correct people when you hear them confuse the two languages. JavaScript is defined by the specification known as ECMA 262. Web browsers have varying degrees of support for the ECMA 262 specification, so the exact version of JavaScript that is available in the browser varies according to the version of the browser being used. Knowing what JavaScript can do. JavaScript is an integral part of web pages today. When you see something like Google Maps, where you can scroll left and right by simply dragging the map, that echoes JavaScript behind the scenes. When you go to a site to look up flight details, and the site automatically suggests airports as you type into the field, that echoes JavaScript. Countless widgets and usability enhancements that you take for granted when you use the web are actually JavaScript programs. JavaScript programs run in the user echo's web browser. This is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, by running on the user echo's web browser, it means that your server doesn't need to run the program. On the other hand, by running in the user echo's browser, it means that your program runs slightly differently depending on the version of browser that the user is using on your site. In fact, the user may have JavaScript turned off completely. While theoretically all JavaScript should run the same, in practice it doesn't. Internet Explorer, especially older versions like 6 and 7, interpret JavaScript in entirely different ways than other browsers like Firefox and Chrome. This means that you need to create two different programs or two different ways to make the same thing work on your web pages. Luckily, there are ways around this, which you discover in this mini book. Examining the ways to add JavaScript to a page. Although JavaScript is included in every Oko's web browser, you still need to Program the actions that you want to happen on your page. You might recall from Book 2, Chapter 2, if you read it, that you can style your page with cascading style sheets, CSS, added directly to the HTML or reference a separate CSS file. Similarly, this section shows the various ways to incorporate JavaScript into a page. You can add the JavaScript directly to the HTML file, reference a separate JavaScript file, or do both. And we help you understand when each option is appropriate. Examining the ways to add JavaScript to a page 189. Adding the JavaScript tag. You add JavaScript to a page with the script tag, like this. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO. Slash JavaScript goes here. Slash script. You may see various ways to include JavaScript in a page, like OC pound text slash ECMAScript OCO, or without the type attribute at all, just an empty script tag. These methods work, sort of, and some of them are technically correct. But the one that you see most often and the one that Wekov had the best luck with is the one shown, with the type of OC pound text slash JavaScript OCO. If you're wondering, the sets of double slashes you see in this example start a comment, which we tell you more about in the next chapter. Adding JavaScript to a page OCO's HTML. Always position the JavaScript code after the opening script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO tag and before the closing slash script tag. You can include those tags in both the head section and the body section of a page. Here OCO's an example showing JavaScript in two different locations in a page. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title another basic page slash title. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO. Slash JavaScript goes here. Slash script. Slash head. Body. H1 here OCO's another basic page slash H1. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO. Slash JavaScript can also go here. Slash script. Slash body. Slash HTML. You could actually place as many of those separate script elements as you want on a page, but there is usually no reason to do so. Using external JavaScript. The example you just saw shows JavaScript within the page, in much the same way that you can add CSS inside of a page. Although that method works for small scripts and certainly comes in handy for showing examples in this book, a better way to add JavaScript is by using external JavaScript files. Using external JavaScript files is the same concept as using external files for CSS. Doing so promotes reusability and makes troubleshooting and changes easier. You can add external JavaScript by using the src attribute, like this. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO. src equals OC external fill.jsoco slash script. This example loads the file OC pound external fill.jsoco from the same directory on the web server. The contents of that file are expected to be JavaScript. Notice in this example that there occurs nothing between the opening script and closing slash script tags. When using an external JavaScript file, you cannot put JavaScript within that same set of tags. You could add a reference, like the one shown, anywhere in the page, but the traditional spot for that is in the head section of the page. Also note, there occurs nothing preventing you from using an external JavaScript file along with in-page JavaScript, so this is perfectly valid. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title another basic page slash title. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO src equals OC external fill.jsoco slash script. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScript OCO. Slash JavaScript goes here. Slash script. Slash head. Body. H1 Hiriokos another basic page slash H1 slash body slash HTML. This example loads an external JavaScript file and then runs some JavaScript right within the page. Chapter 2, Building a JavaScript Program. In this chapter, Opoundo understanding the basic syntax of JavaScript. Opoundo implementing JavaScript functions. Opoundo working with JavaScript and HTML. Opoundo using JavaScript with a web browser. The preceding chapter shows how to add the JavaScript tag to a page. And this chapter concentrates on what you can do after that. Key to understanding a programming language is learning its syntax. Just like when you learn a foreign language and you need to learn the words and grammar of the language, the syntax of a programming language is just that, the words and grammar that make up the language. JavaScript is viewed through a web browser and programmed in a text editor, just like HTML and CSS. The examples you see throughout this chapter can be programmed just like any of the other examples you see throughout the book. In this chapter, you'll see how to build a JavaScript program, including some of the ins and outs of programming in JavaScript. Getting started with JavaScript programming. Since this might be your first exposure to programming of any kind, this section starts with some basic information to get you up to speed. Sending an alert to the screen. You can use JavaScript to send an alert to the screen. Although this is no code used much on web pages, you do use it for troubleshooting your programs. And IDECO's a quick way to see JavaScript in action too. Getting started with JavaScript programming. Begin by opening your text editor with a new or blank document. In the text editor, place the following HTML and JavaScript. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title another basic page slash title. Slash head. Body. H1 Hiriokos another basic page slash H1. Script type equals OCO text slash JavaScriptico. Alert. OC pound helico. Slash script. Slash body. Slash HTML. Save the file as basic.html in your document root. View the page by opening your web browser and navigating to http://localhost/basic.html. You should see a page like that in Figure 2:1. Figure 2:1. Loading a page with. Click OK to dismiss the alert. Congratulations, you're now a JavaScript programmer. Looking at that program, contained in a single line between the opening and closing script tags, there echoes just the word alert with the word OC pound helico enclosed in quotes and parentheses. The word alert is actually a built-in function. More on functions later in the OC pound using functions to avoid repeating yourself. OCO section. Getting started with JavaScript programming 193. The line of JavaScript ends with a semicolon. That echoes an important concept and should be a primary takeaway from this exercise. You end almost every line of JavaScript with a semicolon. Adding comments. Just like the alert function is useful, so too are comments, which are like sticky notes for your code. A comment can be used so that you remember what a certain piece of code is supposed to do, or can be used to skip over parts of the code that you don't want to run. A common form of comment begins with 2 slashes, like this. / this is a comment. You see that form of comment in the preceding chapter. The words that follow the 2 slashes cannot be read by the web browser, but they can be read by people viewing your JavaScript, so keep it clean. Another type of comment begins with a front slash and an asterisk, like this. /*, and closes with an asterisk and a front slash, like this */. With that style of comment, Everything in between the opening and closing comment is no code. Read. /*. This one can't be read. It goes in a comment. */ Holding data for later in variables. When you work with a programming language like JavaScript, you frequently need to hold data for later use. You'll get a value, such as input from a form, that the user fills out, and then you'll need to use it later. To hold data, you use a variable, which keeps track of the data that you tell it to store for the lifetime of your program. That is an important concept. The contents of a variable only live as long as your program. Unlike data in a database, there occurs no persistence for variable data. Variables are defined in JavaScript with the var keyword, short for variable. Var myVariable. JavaScript is case sensitive. You see in the example that the var keyword is lowercase and the variable myVariable uses mixed case. It is important to use the same case for variable names and always be aware that, for instance, myVariable is not the same as myVariable or myVariable. Always follow case sensitivity for JavaScript, and you'll never have a problem with it. When you create a variable, it is common to give it some data to hold onto. You do this with the equals sign. Var myVariable equals 4. That bit of code sets the variable named myVariable equal to the number 4 if you don't set the variable right when you create it, like in that example. You can set it anytime merely by setting it equal to the value that you want. Here is an example. Var myVariable. MyVariable equals 4. You can take a spin with variables by modifying the JavaScript you created in the preceding exercise to look like that in listing 2 to 1. Listing 2 to 1, trying out a variable. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 here is another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. Var myVariable equals 4. Alert, myVariable. /script. /body. /HTML. If you view that code in a browser, you'll see an alert like the one shown in Figure 2-2. Getting started with JavaScript programming 195. Figure 2-2. Displaying the contents of a JavaScript variables can hold strings, which are essentially words enclosed in quotes or numbers, like you saw in the example. Variables need to be named in a certain way. Variables need to begin with a letter and cannot begin with a number. Those certain special characters are fine. In general, variables should contain only letters and numbers. Variable names should be descriptive of what they contain or what they do. Holding multiple values in an array. Variables hold one thing and they do it well, but there are times when you want to hold multiple things. Sure, you could just create multiple variables. One for each thing. You could also create an array. An array is a special type of variable used to hold multiple values. Here is an example. Var myArray equals oc pound steviaco, oka hakaboko, ocker bkako, oka wenako. This array contains 4 things, known as elements. You see more about arrays later, when we tell you about loops. Creating strings to keep track of words. When you place words in quotes in JavaScript, you create what is called a string. It is typical to place the contents of strings into variables, like this. Var a string equals oc pound. This is a string oka. Strings can contain numbers, and when you put a number in quotes it will be a string. The key is the quotes, as shown here. Var another string equals oc pound. This is more than 5 letters long, oka. Strings can be enclosed in single quotes or double quotes. Strings can be put together using the plus sign, plus, as in the exercise Eucharist. About to work through. Joining strings is called concatenation, and we talk a little more about that when we tell you about joining strings in Book 4, Chapter 1. To practice creating a concatenated string, begin by opening your text editor with a new or blank document. In the text editor, place the following HTML and JavaScript. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript Chapter 2 /title. /head. Body. H1 Hiriokos another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. Var string equals OC pound partly echo plus OC pound cloud echo. Alert, string. /script. /body. /HTML. Save the file as string.html in your document root. Open your browser and view the page by going to http://localhost. String.html. You should see an alert like the one in Figure 2-3. Figure 2-3. A concate. Look closely at Figure 2-3. Notice that there occurs no space between the words partly and cloudy. In order to have a space there, it needs to be added either on the end of the word partly or at the beginning of the word cloudy. Working with numbers. You already saw that JavaScript variables can hold numbers. You can also do math with JavaScript, either directly on the numbers or through variables. For example, adding two numbers. Var my number equals 4 plus 4. Subtraction is accomplished with the minus sign, division with the front slash, and multiplication with the asterisk, // subtraction. Var subtraction equals 5 to 3. // division. Var division equals 20/5. // multiplication. Var multiply equals 2 * 2. Testing things with conditionals. With a few pages of JavaScript primer done, it goes time to look at a way to make decisions with JavaScript. These decisions are called conditionals. A good way to explain them is by explaining Stevioko's thought process around mowing the lawn. If it goes greater than 75 degrees, then it goes too hot to mow. If it goes raining, then he cannot mow. Otherwise, he can mow the lawn. This can be set up in JavaScript something like this. If temperature 75. Alert, OC pound it goes too hot to mow go. Else if weather equals OC pound draining gako. Alert, OC pound it goes raining, cannot mow go. Else. Alert, OC pound gotta mow go. That little bit of code reveals all you need to know about conditionals in JavaScript. You test a condition and then do something based on the results of that condition. When you set up a condition, you use parentheses to contain the test and everything that you want to happen then appears between the opening and closing braces. Conditionals are one of the cases where you don't end each line with a semicolon. Here goes an exercise that you can experiment with to work with conditionals. Begin by opening your text editor with a new or blank document. In the text editor, place the following HTML and JavaScript. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript Chapter 2 /title. /head. Body. H1 Hiriokos another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. Var temperature equals 76. Var weather equals OC pound draining gako. If temperature 75. Alert, OC pound it goes too hot to mow go. Else if weather equals OC pound draining gako. Alert, OC pound it goes raining, cannot mow go. Else. Alert, OC pound gotta mow go. /script. /body. /HTML. Save the file as .cond.html in your document root, and view the page in a browser by going to http://localhost/con.html. You should see an alert like the one in Figure 2 to 4. Figure 2 to 4. An alert based on a conditional. Click OK to dismiss the alert. To see how the program responds when you change a value, within the editor, change the value for temperature to 70. Here echoes the code. The line that changed is in bold. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 here echoes another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. Var temperature equals 70. Var weather equals OC pound drain and GACO. If temperature 75. Alert. OC pound echoes too hot to Mobico. Else if weather equals OC pound drain and GACO. Alert. OC pound echoes raining. Canicot Mobico. Else. Alert. OC pound gata Mobico. /script. /body. /HTML. Save .cond.html. Reload the page in your browser by pressing Ctrl+R or Command+R. You should see an alert like the one in Figure 2 to 5. Figure 2 to 5. Getting into the else if. Click OK to dismiss the alert. Take a look at what happens when you change another variable. Within .cond.html, change the weather variable to OC pound Sunyoko. The code should look like this. Again, the change has been bolded. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 here echoes another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. Var temperature equals 70. Var weather equals OC pound Sunyoko. If temperature 75. Alert. OC pound echoes too hot to Mobico. Else if weather equals OC pound drain and GACO. Alert. OC pound echoes raining. Canicot Mobico. Else. Alert. OC pound gata Mobico. /script. /body. /HTML. Save .cond.html and reload the page in your browser. You should see an alert like the one in Figure 2 to 6. Book 3. Chapter 2. Building a. Performing actions multiple times with loops. Figure 2 to 6. Getting into the else. Click OK to dismiss the alert. If a test fails, a conditional can be set up to run another test. In the case of the example, a second test is set up to look at the weather to see if it echoes raining. Notice the use of the double equal signs in the else if condition. Finally, if all tests fail, then a block of code can be set up so that it runs when all else fails. This is noted by the else keyword in the code sample. It echoes important to note that once a condition is true, in the example once the temperature is greater than 75, the code in that block will execute but none of the other conditions will be evaluated. This means that none of the other code in any of the other blocks will ever run. Performing actions multiple times with loops. Sometimes you want to repeat the same code over and over again. This is called looping, and JavaScript includes a couple ways to do it, including for and while. For what it echoes worth. If you want to do something multiple times in JavaScript, a common way to do it is with a for loop. A for loop has pretty specific syntax, as you see here. For var I equals 0, I10, I++. / do something here. That structure includes three specific things within the parentheses. O pound variable, First, a variable is set up, in this case simply called I. That variable is set to the number 0. Pound condition, next is the condition to be tested. In this case, the loop tests whether the variable I is less than 10. If I is less than 10, the code inside the braces runs. Pound postfix operator, the final piece of the for loop construct increments the I variable using something called a postfix operator, I++, which basically increments the value by 1. In plain language, this loop creates a variable and sets it to 0, then it tests to see whether the variable is still less than 10. If it is, then the code within the block is executed. For now, that code is merely a comment, so nothing happens. If not, then the variable is incremented by 1 and the whole thing starts all over again. The first two parts of a for loop use semicolons, the last part doesn't occur. The first time through, the variable I is 0, which is, obviously, less than 10 OCO, and the code inside the block executes so that I is incremented by 1. The next time through, the value of I is 1, which is still less than 10, so the code in the block is executed again. This keeps going until the value of I is 10. Try it out with an exercise. Begin by opening your text editor with a new or blank document. In the text editor, place the following HTML and JavaScript. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 Hirioko is another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript OCO. 4. I equals 0, I10, I++. Alert. OC the variable I is currently set to OC plus I. /script. /body. /HTML. Save the file as 4.html in your document root. View the file in a browser by going to http://localhost/for.html. You'll see a series of alerts, one of which is shown in Figure 2-7. Figure 2-7. The results. Performing actions multiple times with loops. Now take a look at how to determine the length of an array. Earlier in the chapter you saw an array like this one. Var myArray equals OC pound steviaco, oka hakaboko, akrbkako, oka weniko. A common use of a for loop is to spin through an array and do something with each value. The conditional in the example for loop you saw earlier set the value at 10. But how do you know how many values are in an array? Yes, you easily could count the number of variables in the array shown, but sometimes you have no idea how many elements are in an array. You can ask the array itself to tell you how long it is by asking it. You ask through the length property, like this. MyArray.length. Listing 2-2 shows an example that loops through the array shown and displays each element. Listing 2-2, using a for loop on an array. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 Hirioko is another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript OCO. Var myArray equals OC pound steviaco, oka hakaboko, akrbkako, oka weniko. 4. I equals 0, I myArray.length, I++. Alert. OC pound hello OC pound plus myArray I. /script. /body. /HTML. This code uses a standard for loop, but instead of setting the length to a certain number, it uses the length property to find out how long my array really is. Each time through the loop, an alert is shown, like the one in Figure 2-8. Figure 2-8. Displaying an alert from an The I variable is used right within the loop to access each element of the myArray variable. You see, an array is an ordered list of things, with the order being provided by numbers that you don't normally see. These hidden numbers are called indexes. The index of the first element in an array is 0, not 1 as you might expect. In this example, since I is 0 the first time through the loop, it can access the first element. The second time through the loop, as shown in figure 2 to 8, I is equal to 1, and so the second element is shown. The syntax that you see there, myArray I, is a really common syntax that you see in for loops. While UCarry here. Another type of loop is called a while loop, and it looks like this. While I10 / do something interesting / don't forget to increment the counter. A while loop is similar to a for loop insofar as the code within the braces executes as long as the condition is true. Unlike a for loop, though, you need to explicitly do something inside of the loop in order to break out of the loop. If you forget, you'll be stuck in an endless loop. Using functions to avoid repeating yourself. A good programming practice is to reuse code whenever possible. Not only does this cut down on the number of possible errors in your code, but it also makes for less work, which is always good when it comes to coding. This section looks at a primary way to implement code reuse, functions. JavaScript includes a number of built-in functions. You've been using one throughout the chapter, alert. The alert function creates a dialog in the browser. Creating functions. Functions are created with the function keyword followed by the name of the function, parentheses, and opening and closing braces, like this. Function my function. / function code goes here. What you do inside of the function is up to you. Anything that you can do outside of the function you can do inside of it. If you find that your page needs to update a bunch of HTML, you could use a function so that you don't need to keep repeating that same code over and over again. Adding function arguments. The power of functions comes with their capability to accept input, called arguments, and then do something with that input. For example, here is a simple function to add two numbers. Function add numbers, number 1 number 2. Alert, number 1 plus number 2. This function accepts two arguments called number 1 and number 2. Those arguments are then used within the alert function. You've seen the alert function throughout the chapter, and now you understand a bit more about what's going on. The alert function accepts one argument, the text to display in the alert dialog. In this case, because you're adding two numbers, the alert displays the resulting number. You work through an exercise for this in the following section. Calling a function. Just creating the function is not enough. You need to call it too. Calling a function means that you execute it, just like when you called the alert function earlier in this chapter. Until you call a function, it doesn't really do anything, much like the alert function doesn't do anything until you invoke it. Calling one of your own functions looks just like the call to the alert function. Here goes that exercise we promised. Begin by opening your text editor with a new or blank document. In the text editor, place the following: HTML and JavaScript. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2 / title. / head. Body. H1 here goes another basic page / H1. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript OCO. / define the function. Function add numbers, number 1 number 2. Alert, number 1 plus number 2. / call the function. add numbers, 49,2. / script. / body. / HTML. Save the file as func.html in your document root. Open your browser and point to http://localhost/func.html. You should see an alert like the one shown in figure 2 to 9. Figure 2 to 9. Executing a improving the add numbers function. The function that Yakov created, add numbers, accepts 2 arguments and adds them. But what if you send in something that is not a number? The function has no way to test that, and so it happily tries to add them. To experiment with this, change the 2 in the call to add numbers to oc.uko, like this. add numbers, 49 okatwuko. When you reload the page, you'll see an alert like the one in figure 2 to 10. Figure 2 to 10. Trying to add something that is not a. Figure 2 to 11. An alert generated using JavaScript includes a function to test whether something is a number. The function is called is NaN, which stands for is not a number. This can be added anywhere that you need to test to make sure something is a number. Before working with it, like in the case of the add numbers function, you use the isNaN function within an if conditional and then react accordingly. If it is not a number, here Yakov's an updated add numbers function. Function add numbers, number 1, number 2. If isNaN, number 1. Alert, number 1 plus oc is not a number oko. Else if isNaN, number 2. Alert, number 2 plus oc is not a number oko. Else. Alert, number 1 plus number 2. If you call it with one of the 2 arguments as something other than a number, you'll receive an alert stating that. For example, if you change the number 2 to oc.uko, you'll receive the alert shown in figure 2 to 11. JavaScript is case sensitive, so you need to make sure you use isNaN with the correct case. You see variations on functions throughout the remainder of the book that help build on this introduction. Returning results from functions. The function that you created in this section sends an alert. But there are times when you want to have the function send something back to you to do something and then return the results. The return keyword is used to return results from a function. In the add numbers function example shown, instead of using an alert, right within the function you could return the result. Here Yakov's an example. Function add numbers, number 1, number 2. Var result equals number 1 plus number 2. Return result. You can call the function just like before, but you now need to capture the result, typically into another variable, like this. Var result equals add numbers, 49,2. Listing 2 to 3 shows the full HTML for this example. Listing 2 to 3, returning a value from a function. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript chapter 2 / title. / head. Body. H1 here Yakov's another basic page / H1. Script type equals oko text / JavaScript echo. / define the function. Function add numbers, number 1, number 2. Var result equals number 1 plus number 2. Return result. / call the function. Var result equals add numbers, 49,2. / script. / body. / HTML. Objects in brief. Only one return is allowed from a function and nothing after the return statement executes. Once you call a return, the function ends. Objects in brief. Look have seen arrays and how they can be used to hold multiple values. Arrays hold that data using an unseen numbered index. On the other hand, objects can hold multiple values, but those values are accessed through a named index, called a property. Objects can actually do a lot more than this, such as hold functions, called methods, but for this example, consider this narrow focus, using an object to hold multiple values. Creating objects. Here goes an example object for a ball. Var ball equals OC pound coloroco, OC pound hawaiiaco, OC pound typico, OC pound baseball loco. Whereas arrays are created with square brackets, objects are created with curly braces, as shown in the example. When you define an object, you can define one or more properties akin to the elements in an array. In this instance, you created two properties, one called color and one called type. The values are then set to white and baseball, respectively. You can access objects using a single dot, like so. Ball.color. The single dot is known as dot notation when used in this way. Listing 2 to 4 shows HTML to create a ball object and display its color property. Listing 2 to 4, creating an object and displaying a property. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript Chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 here goes another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScriptico. Var ball equals OC pound coloroco, OC pound hawaiiaco, OC pound typico, OC pound baseball loco. Objects in brief. 209. Alert, ball.color, /script, /body, /HTML. When viewed in a browser, you get an alert like the one shown in Figure 2 to 12. Figure 2 to 12. Displaying an object. Adding properties to objects. Sometimes you want to add properties onto objects after they have been created. This too can be done using dot notation, like so. Ball.weight equals 15. Here goes an exercise to create an object, add to it, and then loop through it. Using a new kind of loop constructor. Begin by opening your text editor with a new or blank document. In the text editor, place the following HTML and JavaScript. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title JavaScript Chapter 2/title. /head. Body. H1 here goes another basic page /H1. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScriptico. Var ball equals OC pound coloroco, OC pound hawaiiaco, OC pound typico, OC pound baseball loco. Ball.weight equals 15. 4. Var prop in ball. Alert, ball prop. /script. /body. /HTML. Book 3. Chapter 2. Building a JavaScript program. Working with HTML documents 210. Save this as object HTML in your document root. View the page in a browser. By going to http://localhost/obj.html. You should see 3 alerts. Like the ones in Figure 2 to 13. Figure 2 to 13. 3 object. Property. Alerts. As you can see from the alerts, the properties that were created right along with the object are shown, as is the weight property that was added later. Using the dot notation. Later in this chapter, you see much more about objects, so this bit of background will be helpful. Working with HTML documents. All this JavaScript programming gets put to practical use when you start adding it to web pages. JavaScript integrates into HTML and has access to Everything in a web page. This means that you can add HTML to a page, take it away, or change it, all on the fly, in real time. In order to work together, JavaScript and HTML need a common language so that JavaScript can know what to do on a page. JavaScript and HTML work together through something called the Document Object Model, DOM. The DOM gives JavaScript access to a web page so that it can manipulate the page. Working with HTML documents 211. The connection between JavaScript and HTML is through the document object. You see the document object used in this section along with other functions to access pieces of a page using JavaScript. The document object is actually a child of the window object, and there are other children that are interesting too, as you see later in this chapter. Accessing HTML with JavaScript. You access parts of a web page, the document object, using JavaScript functions. You can look at a piece of the page to see what text it has in it or change the text in the page. You can also add to the page with JavaScript. And much more. Using getElementById to access a specific element. The most specific way that you can access an element on a page is to use its ID. Recall that ID attributes can be placed on any element, and they are supposed to be unique throughout the page. In this way, each element that is already part of the DOM can be accessed directly rather than by traversing the document tree. Consider the HTML in listing 2 to 5. Listing 2 to 5, basic HTML for demonstrating the DOM. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title chapter 2/title. /head. Body. div ID equals okamativoko hello /div. div class equals okanav class oko second line /div. div class equals okanav class oko. P class equals okok class oko. This is in a paragraph /p. /div. div class equals okanav class oko last line /div. /body. /html. That HTML, when viewed in a browser, creates a page like the one shown in Figure 2 to 14. Figure 2 to 14. Creating a basic page to demonstrate. Looking at the HTML again, you can see an ID attribute on the first div on the page. You can use the getElementById function to access that element. Yukari saying, OC great, I can access the element, but what can I do with it? Oko, glad you asked. When you access an element, you view its current HTML or make changes, such as CSS styling or the actual contents of the element itself. Try it out in an exercise. 1. Open your text editor with a new or blank document. 2. In the text editor, place the following HTML and JavaScript. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title chapter 2/title. /head. Body. div ID equals okamativoko hello /div. div class equals okanav class oko second line /div. div class equals okanav class oko. P class equals okok class oko. This is in a paragraph /p. /div. div class equals okanav class oko last line /div. Script type equals oko text /javascript oko. Var the div equals document.getElementById, OC_mativoko. Alert, OC_ the content is OC_ plus the div.inner HTML. /script. /body. /HTML. Working with HTML documents 213. 3. Save the file as getBit.html in your document root. 4. Open your web browser and view the page at http://localhost. getVid.html. You should see an alert like the one shown in Figure 2 to 15. Figure 2 to 15. An alert. Produced. By the get element. By ID. 5. Click OK to dismiss the alert and close your browser. 6. Back within getVid.html in your editor, remove the JavaScript line that begins with alert. Replace that line with these two. The div.style.border equals OC#3px solid black echo. The div.innerHTML equals OC#. This is now changed text OK. The entire script block should now look like this. Script type equals OK text / JavaScript echo. Var the div equals document.getElement by ID, OC#mid_echo. The div.style.border equals OC#3px solid black echo. The div.innerHTML equals OC#. This is now changed text OK. /script. When viewed in a browser, the page now looks like that in Figure 2 to 16. Notice specifically that the text of the top line has been changed and now has a border. In this exercise, you created HTML and JavaScript. In the JavaScript, you accessed an HTML element using the getElementById function. From there you displayed it using an alert. The second part of the exercise saw you change the element taco's contents using innerHTML and also change the CSS style of the element using the style.border property. Working with web browsers. Figure 2 to 16. The page. After changing it with getElement. You have now seen how to use getElementById as part of the DOM in JavaScript, so check that one off of your bucket list. IDECO's good to have the understanding that getElementById is there in case you need to work with someone else's JavaScript. However, there is a better way to work with web pages through JavaScript and IDECO's called jQuery. You learn about jQuery in the next chapter of this mini book. For now, savor your victory over the DOM. Working with web browsers. This JavaScript primer wraps up with a quick look at JavaScript's view of the web browser. As you just saw, when a page is loaded, the document object gives a view of the page to JavaScript. Likewise, a couple other objects give JavaScript a view of the web browser itself. Using these objects, which are children of the window object, you can do things like detect what type of browser the visitor is using and also redirect the user to a different web page entirely. Detecting the browser. The navigator object is used to detect things about the visitor's browser, like what version it is. This information can be used to present a specific page or layout to the user. Working with web browsers 215. Limitations of browser detection. When you use a method like the one shown here, you need to be aware that it is not always accurate. Detecting the browser in this way relies solely on what the browser claims that it is, and this information can be trivially faked by the user. Therefore, when you use the navigator object or any other OC# user agent snifferoko method, you should be aware that there are limitations to its accuracy and it is definitely not 100% foolproof. Listing 2 to 6 shows HTML and JavaScript to display the user agent property of the navigator object. Listing 2 to 6, displaying the user agent. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title chapter 2 / title. / head. Body. divid equals okoutboot echo / div. Script type equals oko text / JavaScript echo. Var output div equals document.getElementById, OC#output echo. Output div.style.border equals OC#3px solid black echo. Output div.style.padding equals OC#3 coco. Var user agent equals navigator.user agent. Output div.inner HTML equals OC#. You are using OC# plus user agent. /script. /body. /HTML. When viewed in a browser, the output looks like that in figure 2-17. Note that if you run this code, your browser version will likely be different than this. Book 3. Chapter 2. Building a JavaScript program. 216. Working with web browsers. Figure 2-17. Viewing the user agent. Redirecting to another page. Yoko probably encountered one somewhere along the way, a page that says OC#. Click here if your query not automatically redirected Oko and then automatically redirects you anyway. Did you ever wonder why they bother with the OC#? Click here Oko part. That Oko's done in case your browser doesn't have JavaScript enabled. This section shows the code for such a page. The location object provides the capability to redirect to another page. And Idaco's one of the simplest JavaScript pages you'll ever write. Listing 2-7 shows the HTML and JavaScript. Listing 2-7, a redirect page. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title chapter 2/title. /head. Body. div. Ref equals ocode : www.braindia.argo. Click here if your query not automatically redirected. /a. /div. Script type equals Oko text /JavaScript Oko. Window.location.replace. OC# http : www.braindia.argo. /script. /body. /HTML. Working with web browsers 217. A page viewed in a browser looks like the one in figure 2-18, but only for a short time. In fact, you may not even see it before being redirected. Figure 2-18. The redirect page just prior to being. The HTML for this page simply sets up a basic A element with a link. No JavaScript necessary. Then the JavaScript uses the location.replace object to send a user to a different page. Almost nothing to it. There occurs more to both the navigator and location objects in JavaScript. For more information on the navigator object, go to this page on Mozilla Developer Network. https://developer.mozilla.org/n-us/docs/dom/window. Navigator. For more information on the location object, see this page. https://developer.mozilla.org/n-us/docs/dom/window. Location. Book 3, JavaScript. Chapter 3, Adding jQuery. In this chapter, Opoundo understanding what jQuery is. Opoundo installing jQuery. Opoundo adding jQuery to a page. Opoundo adding HTML with jQuery. Opoundo changing styles with jQuery. jQuery is a JavaScript library. Okay, that might not make much sense. Wataco's a JavaScript library. A JavaScript library is a collection of code that you use when you want to get access to additional functionality or make life easier. jQuery does both. jQuery is simply JavaScript that you add to your web page to make writing JavaScript easier. You still use JavaScript with jQuery, so everything you learn in Chapter 2 is not wasted. However, there are certain things that jQuery does much better than plain old JavaScript. Working with web pages is one such thing. For instance, where you might use getElementById. jQuery has things called selectors that enable much more powerful ways to access things on a web page for JavaScript to use. This chapter explains how to get started with jQuery and then shows some examples using jQuery. Subsequent chapters in this mini-book and indeed in the entire book assume that jQuery using jQuery in certain places, as will become obvious as you progress. jQuery introduced. jQuery is quite popular, although there are no accurate statistics to show how often jQuery is used. Cursory glances at popular sites show that jQuery is all over the web. jQuery also makes cross-browser development easier, though you haven't seen much of it so far, especially if you've been reading this book in linear order. Support for JavaScript differs widely from browser to browser and from version to version. What works in Firefox might not work at all in Internet Explorer or might work completely the opposite. Installing jQuery. A favorite example of how JavaScript support differs from browser to browser involves the handling of dates. There is a certain JavaScript function that returns the year. For example, assuming IDACOS 2008 when you call the function, JavaScript is supposed to return 2008 OK, but that is not always the case, depending on which browser you're using when that function is used. In Firefox or Safari, you receive the full year, 2008, as you could expect. When you use JavaScript in Internet Explorer, you receive the number of years that have elapsed since 1900. When the year is 2008, you could receive 108 back from Internet Explorer. Obviously, if you're trying to do any sort of date calculation with that value, IDACO's going to be wildly askew. Which browser is right? It doesn't really matter. What's important is that the browser manufacturers read the JavaScript specification differently and in the end return different things for the same function. Unfortunately, the date example is but one of many such examples, some much more serious than that, where browsers differ in how they implement JavaScript. The good news is that jQuery takes that complication away. jQuery OCO's functions figure out what browser is being used in an accurate way, and then account for it in order to make the browser behave in a consistent manner. Installing jQuery. There are two ways to use jQuery, either downloaded locally or on a content delivery network, CDN. The local copy is just that, a file that sits within your document root on your server's hard drive. A CDN-hosted version means that the jQuery file sits on someone else's server and you just reference it in your code. Whether you use a local copy of a CDN is up to you. For production websites, we strongly recommend using a local copy of jQuery for speed and reliability. However, in development, like when you're following along in this book, IDACO's okay to use the CDN version of jQuery. The Bucaco's examples use a CDN-hosted jQuery, but this section shows how to use both local and CDN. Installing jQuery locally. jQuery is available as a download from www.jquery.com. Once there, select the production version and click download. Depending on your browser OCO's settings, you may end up with a page full of JavaScript code. If that OCO's the case, select Save As from the File menu. In other cases, you'll simply be prompted to download a file. In the end, you want to end up with a file named like jQuery 1.8.1.minjs, regardless of whether you save the file or download it. Adding jQuery to a page 221. The file should be placed into your document root. Remember the file name. You'll need it later. That OCO's all there is to installing jQuery. OCO, download it and put the file into Your document root. Using CDN hosted jQuery. The CDN hosted option for jQuery is great for development. You don't have to worry about downloading the file or putting it in the right place. IDECO's always available, as long as the CDN is up. CDN hosted versions are available from many of the big-time players on the web, like Google and Microsoft. You don't need to download anything in order to use a CDN hosted jQuery, so this section is short and sweet. You can find the links for the CDN hosted versions at www.jquery.com/download. The next section shows how to add CDN hosted jQuery to your page. Adding jQuery to a page. Now that you have jQuery downloaded or know where to find the CDN hosted version, you need to reference it in your page. jQuery is just like any external JavaScript file which you see in Chapter 1 of this mini-book. This section shows how to add jQuery to your page both for locally hosted jQuery and CDN hosted jQuery. Adding local jQuery to a page. In the preceding section, we instruct you to download jQuery and place it in the web server IDECO's document root. If you don't remember the file name, locate it in your document root. IDECO will be named like jQuery 1.8.1.minjs. Note that the version number will almost certainly be different by the time you read this. Adding jQuery to a page means adding an external script reference, like this. Script type equals oco_text/javascript echo src equals oco jQuery 1.8.1 min.jsico/ script. That reference is usually added in the head portion of a page. Listing 3-1 shows a page with the jQuery script referenced in the head section. Listing 3-1, adding jQuery to a page. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery/title. Script type equals oco_text/javascript echo. src equals oco jQuery 1.8.1.minjsico/script. /head. Body. h1 adding jQuery/h1. /body. /html. That echoes all there is to adding jQuery. Later in this chapter, you find out what to do now that IDECO is loaded. Adding CDN jQuery to a page. Loading CDN hosted jQuery is just like loading it locally, minus the part where you have jQuery stored on your hard drive, of course. Other than that detail, you simply add jQuery like any other external JavaScript file. Here goes an example. Script type equals oco_text/javascript echo. src equals oco http://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jQuery/jQuery 1.8.1.min. jsico /script. But how do you find out the secret location where jQuery is hosted for public use? Go to http://jQuery.com/download and you can find a CDN hosted jQuery. Within the download page, you see a section for CDN hosted jQuery. When you find one you want to use, right-click and select the copy link location option or similar from the context menu in your browser. That will copy the URL to your clipboard for later use. A full-page example with CDN hosted jQuery looks strikingly similar to the page for the locally hosted copy, only the src attribute has changed. Listing 3-2 shows the HTML and JavaScript. Note specifically the script tag in the head section. Listing 3-2, CDN hosted jQuery. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery/title. Script type equals oco_text/javascript echo. src equals oco://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jQuery/jQuery. 1.8.1.MySQL /script /head body h1 adding jQuery /h1 /body /HTML incorporating the jQuery ready function. A common problem when programming JavaScript is that the JavaScript program will run before the page is loaded. The preceding chapter explains that you can access HTML elements on a page. This means you can also access things like images, forms, and whatever else you want on a web page. The problem comes in when you try to access something on the page before the browser has it loaded. jQuery offers ways around this, which you see in this section. jQuery has a function called ready that waits for the page to be, well, ready. Not quite everything is available. For example, some images still may be loading, but the HTML elements are ready to be worked with when the ready function is called. When you program with jQuery, it is typical to place your code inside of the ready function so that you can ensure that all the stuff on the page is ready for you to use in your program. Really, there is not that much to this. So try not to overthink it. An example would help illustrate. Listing 3 to 3 shows an HTML page with JavaScript inside of the jQuery ready function. Incorporating the jQuery ready function. Listing 3 to 3 using the jQuery ready function. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery /title. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com /ajax/jQuery 1.8.1.MySQL /script /head body h1 adding jQuery /h1 script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo $document .ready function alert OC_echo /script /body /HTML. When viewed through a browser, the result is an alert like the one in Figure 3:1. Figure 3:1. An alert produced by the jQuery ready. This code has two areas of interest. The first is the script element itself. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com /ajax/jQuery 1.8.1.MySQL /script. This includes jQuery from Microsoft echo CDN into the page. The next area of interest is within the body, specifically, the script. Within the body, script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. $document .ready function alert OC_echo /script. This code calls the jQuery ready function part of the document object. Notice the special syntax with the $sign and parentheses. This is what tells the browser and JavaScript that what follows is going to be jQuery, so processing is handed over to jQuery. And because jQuery has a function called ready, it knows what to do. You use $all over the place with jQuery. It echoes what tells jQuery that it should pay attention. Inside of the jQuery ready function there echoes this code. Function alert OC_echo. You know all about functions already, so this is not anything new. Or is it? If this is a function, where echoes the function name. For most uses of jQuery, you'll see similar syntax to what you see here, with a function with no name like this one and then code within it. When you see the syntax, function, with no name, it echoes called an anonymous function. For the most part, you don't need to know much about anonymous functions until you get much deeper into JavaScript programming. For what you're doing here, just know that this is the typical syntax that you use when you use jQuery. Within the function an alert is displayed. No surprise here, is the standard alert function you've been using throughout the book. But what is happening here is important. You're using jQuery together with JavaScript inside of the same script. Selecting elements with jQuery. The preceding section explains how to select the document object. It also provides a great deal of how jQuery works. When you use the code $document, you use something called a selector. Most of what you'll do in jQuery happens through selectors. For instance, you'll frequently select a piece of a web page and then have jQuery perform an action on that piece of the page. That action could be anything from adding text, changing HTML, changing CSS, or, well, just about anything you can think of. The basic flow for JavaScript programming with jQuery is this. 1. Select an element on the web page, or the entire page itself. 2. Do something interesting with that element. Selecting elements with jQuery. Okay, what you do with the element doesn't have to be interesting, but you will do something with the selected element. That something can be anything, from removing the element to adding or changing it, or simply getting information from the element, like its text or current CSS styles. jQuery selectors up close. There are 3 primary or basic selectors in jQuery. We call them primary or basic because they are the ones you'll use most frequently. You can set up very complex selectors based on the structure of the page, but most often you'll use one of these 3 selectors. Pound by class, pound by ID, pound by element. If you had some HTML that looked like this, PID equals okabook.leoko mybook/p. You could access that with jQuery like this. $OC# book.leoko. It's important to note that things in jQuery and JavaScript are case sensitive. So book title is not the same as book title and not the same as book title. It doesn't matter what case you use, as long as it matches between the HTML and the JavaScript and jQuery. Now take a look at this bit of HTML. P class equals okatitle class oko. This is some text /p. The jQuery selector looks like this. $OC#.title class oko. If you think that these selectors look like their CSS counterparts, you're right. Don't worry if you weren't thinking that there wanna be a quiz. In CSS, you access items by their ID with a #, hashtag, and you access classes with a single dot. Hashtag book title. Title class. Working with HTML using jQuery 227. All you're doing for jQuery is wrapping it in the $construct and using some quotes too. So you get this. $OC# hashtag book.leoko. $OC# title class oko. The other frequently used selector grabs all the elements of a certain type. The following selector selects all div elements on the entire page. $OC# devoka. There are more advanced selectors. For example, you can select by an element taco's position on the page and, well, just about any combination that you can think of. But you'll use these 3 most often, and where you need more, we'll show them to you. Filtering. One additional thing you should know about jQuery selectors is that you can filter them. This is particularly handy when it comes to working with forms and events. With that in mind, we save the discussion of filtering until we get to forms and events in the upcoming chapters. Working with HTML using jQuery. You can use jQuery to do all kinds of fun things with the HTML on a page. And we hint at some of those things, like adding HTML to a page or changing text, and so on. Idako's time to learn how to do it. Adding HTML to a page. jQuery can be used to add HTML to a page. You can add all sorts of HTML, images, just about anything, and completely change the layout of the page using jQuery. Doing so is not really a good idea, though, because it can get really confusing to figure out what echoes coming from where, and also can be more difficult to maintain in the future when you need to change the page. In any event, adding HTML for things like error messages or in order to add data to a page is quite common. Think about a travel site that looks up flight information. You click a button and it builds the results dynamically, right on the same page. Those sites use JavaScript, many times jQuery, to accomplish this feat, but before you go changing HTML, you should learn how to add HTML to a page. Working with HTML using jQuery. Listing 3 to 4 shows a simple HTML page that creates a list of items. Listing 3 to 4, HTML with a list. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery / title. / head. Body. H1 adding HTML / H1. All ID equals Okathilistoko. Li Hiriokos 1 / Li. Li Hiriokos 2 / Li. /all. /body. /HTML. A page viewed in a web browser looks like the one in Figure 3-2. Figure 3-2. A simple page with a. The page uses an unordered list with 2 items. You can add another item to that list with the jQuery append function. Doing so means selecting the all element, which you already know how to do, and then calling the append function. Hiriokos an example to add a third item to the list. $OC# Thelistoko, .append, OC# Li Hiriokos 3 / Lioko. As you can see, you select the all element using an ID selector and then call the append function with the HTML to add. Doesn't get much simpler than that. Working with HTML using jQuery 229. Listing 3 to 5 shows the final code. Note that jQuery has been added to it in the head section and the append function is within the ready function. As discussed earlier. Listing 3 to 5, adding an item with jQuery. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery / title. Script type equals ocotext / javascriptico. src equals ocode : / ajax.asnet.com / ajax / jQuery / jQuery. 1.8.1.minjsico. /script. /head. Body. H1 adding HTML / H1. All ID equals Okathilistoko. Li Hiriokos 1 / Li. Li Hiriokos 2 / Li. /all. Script type equals ocotext / javascriptico. $document. .ready function. $OC# #Thelistoko. .append. OC# Li Hiriokos 3 / Lioka. /script. /body. /HTML. When viewed in a browser, the result looks like Figure 3-3. Figure 3-3. Adding HTML with jQuery Okos. Append. Working with HTML using jQuery. Changing elements. Adding with append makes sense. You select the element that you want and then append more HTML onto it. But what about when you want to change something that already exists? There are a few ways to do it, depending on what you want to change. For example, say you wanted to change the text of the elements in the page that you just worked on. Instead of having each element say oc_heriocos, oko, you want it to say oc_item.oko. You could add an ID to each element and then change the HTML with the HTML or the text function. But that seems like a lot of work, and it creates another problem if the HTML changes somewhere along the way. Another way, and the way that we show, is to loop through each of the list items and change them. The preceding chapter explains loops. jQuery has its own way to loop, called each. The each loop method has an advantage over the while and for loops. The each function can be used with jQuery, so you get the full advantage of all the jQuery functions, and you can chain the each function with other jQuery functions. Chaining is the term used with jQuery to describe what you do when you connect functions with dots in order to make the function apply to the chain. We start this example with the HTML from listing 3 to 5. In fact, we leave the append function in there to show that the change make applies not only to the HTML that was originally on the page, but also to HTML that you add. Granted, with just 2 elements to change, you can't just do this in the HTML itself, but this example shows the process and functions for changing HTML so that you can use it when you really need it. Listing 3 to 6 shows the HTML and JavaScript for this example. Listing 3 to 6, changing text with each type HTML. HTML head title jQuery/title script type equals oko text /javascript oko src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jQuery/jQuery 1.8.1.minjSQL /script/head body h1 adding HTML/h1 ul_id equals okathelistoko. Working with HTML using jQuery 231. Liheriocos 1/li. Liheriocos 2/li. /ul. Script type equals oko text/javascript oko. $document .ready function. $OC #hashtag #thelistoko.append OC Liheriocos 3/lioko. $OC #the list lioko. Each function. Var existing text equals $this .text .substr 7,1 $this .text OC item OC plus existing text /script /body /HTML. The JavaScript and jQuery here shows a few new things, so look a bit closer at the code. The first line of the new code is this. $OC #the list lioko. Each function. That line uses a selector to find all the elements within the ID of the list. That echoes a little different than the other selectors you see in the chapter and represents how jQuery can use the PHP hierarchy to access only the items that you want. The each function is changed onto the selector and sets up an anonymous function. At this point, you know that the code will begin looping through each element within the ID of the list. The next line of code looks like this. Var existing text equals $this .text .substr 7,1. This code sets up a plain JavaScript variable, existing text, and sets it equal to the result of $this .text .substr 7,1. But what echoes this, or more appropriately, $this. The special selector $this refers to the current element being worked on. JavaScript has an equivalent called this. But you want the jQuery version, so you wrap it in the $/parenthesis. Notation. The $this selector is chained to the jQuery text function, which retrieves the element's text with no HTML markup, just the text. The text function is then chained to the substring function. The substring function grabs a substring, or portion of a string, and returns it. In this case, you want substring to return to you one single character beginning at the 7th position. You can do this because you know that every element begins with the word hieroglyphs followed by a space, like this. Changing attributes and styles. Hieroglyphs 1. Counting characters from the left, there are 6 characters in hieroglyphs. Plus 1 character for the space. That makes 7, so you end up with substring 7,1. Granted, this breaks when you get to 10 items because jQuery only returning a single character. You could fancy this up by using a regular expression, which you haven't really spent time on yet, so for this example, leave it as is. Okay, if you must know, you could replace the substring function with the match function, and it would look like this. Var existing text equals $this dot text dot match /d/. Back to reality and the example, the final line of code looks like this. $this dot text $item $pound plus existing text. That line simply calls the text function, but instead of returning text, this time you set it to $item $pound plus existing text. Because you have the number of the item in the variable existing text, goes like jQuery. Appending it. A page viewed in a browser looks like that in Figure 3 to 4. Figure 3 to 4. Changing text in a web page. Changing attributes and styles. jQuery makes retrieving and setting HTML attributes and CSS styles easy. This means you can change things like an image source or a CSS class or even CSS styles themselves. This section looks at how to do just that. Changing attributes and styles. Reading attributes. Remember from way earlier in this book, provided you read earlier chapters before this one, you learned that the descriptive stuff contained inside of an HTML element is called an attribute. For example, ID equals OCXLinkaco class equals ACALinkaco ref equals ocode //www.example.comico web site /a. The ID, class, and ref parts that you see in that A element are all attributes. Using jQuery, you can find out the values for all those attributes. And as you see later, you can set them to. Reading an attribute with jQuery means using the attribute function. Listing 3 to 7 shows code using attribute to read the ref attribute from the link you just saw. Listing 3 to 7, using the attribute function. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery /title. Script type equals ocode text /javascriptico. src equals ocode //ajax.asnet.com /ajax/jQuery 1.8.1.minjsico /script /head body h1 attributes /h1 ID equals OCXLinkaco class equals ACALinkaco ref equals ocode //www.example.comico web site /a. Script type equals ocode text /javascriptico. Document .ready function. Alert $OC pound #xlinkaco .attribute OC pound refoco /script /body /HTML. The bulk of the work is done on one line. Alert $OC pound #xlinkaco .attribute OC pound refoco That line uses a selector to select the element with the ID of xlink and then calls the addr function with ocpound_refoco as the argument. The result is returned and placed in an alert, shown in Figure 3 to 5. Figure 3 to 5. Accessing the href writing attributes. Just like the text and HTML functions, you can also set the value of an attribute using the addr function. For example, to change the value of the href attribute from the code in listing 3 to 7, you could do this. $OC#xlinkaco.addr OC#refoco OC#http://www.braingia.argoco. Images are added to a page by using the src attribute. This means that you can change the src attribute to change the image on the fly through JavaScript. Listing 3 to 8 contains HTML for a page. The HTML contains an image that loads square.jpg. Listing 3 to 8, a page with an image. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery/title. /head. Body. H1 attributes/H1. img alt equals ocaskarioko id equals okadamagioko src equals okaskar.jpgako / body / html. When viewed in a browser, the page looks like Figure 3 to 6. You can change that image to a different one using the addr function. Listing 3 to 9 shows the code to achieve such a feat. Changing attributes and styles. 235. Figure 3 to 6. A page with a square. Listing 3 to 9, changing an imagioco source. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery/title. Script type equals ocotext/javascriptico. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jQuery/jQuery. 1.8.1.minjsico. /script. /head. Body. H1 attributes/H1. img alt equals ocaskarioko id equals okadamagioko src equals okaskar.jpgako / script type equals ocotext/javascriptico. $document .ready function. $OC#vimagioco.addr OC#circoco,ocoheart.jpgako /script /body /HTML. Figure 3 to 7 shows the result. Book 3. Chapter 3. Figure 3 to 7. Changing the image through. Look closely at the HTML and you'll see a problem. You could successfully change the src attribute, but the alt attribute still says that the image is a square. You should change the alt attribute to match the image. Doing so is as simple as calling addr again, this time to set the alt attribute. $OC#vimagioco.addr OC#altico,ocoheartico. Because you never see the change, the code in listing 3 to 9 might not seem all that interesting. Do something to change that. Add a timer to delay the switch. For this timer, use the native JavaScript function called setTimeout. The setTimeout function takes 2 arguments, the function to call when the timer expires and how long to wait. The time value that you use is in milliseconds, so 2 seconds is 2000 milliseconds. Listing 3 to 10 shows the new code. Listing 3 to 10, delaying the image change. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery/title. Script type equals ocotext/javascriptico. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jquery/jquery 1.8.1.minjSQL /script /head body h1 attribute /h1 img alt equals ocoscarioko id equals okinamagioko src equals ocoscar.jpgako script type equals ocotext /javascript echo function chen-image $oc# #dimagioko .adru oc# srkoko oko heart.jpgako $oc# #dimagioko .adru oc# altico oko heartico $document .ready function set timeout chen-image 2000 /script /body /html. This code builds a function called chen-image. Inside of that function is the same line of jQuery that you had in the preceding example, listing 3 to 9. Inside of the ready function, there occurs now a call to set timeout with the two function arguments we already mentioned, the chen-image function and 2000 for a delay of 2 seconds. When you view this in a browser, you first receive a page like that in figure 3 to 6 and then, 2 seconds later, receive a page like figure 3 to 7. Changing CSS. You can also change the styling information on a page, either by setting the styles directly or by changing the CSS class applied to an element. Class is just another attribute on an element, so changing CSS means using the adr function again. Adding a class. Listing 3 to 11 contains basic HTML with some styling information in the head section. Listing 3 to 11, HTML with CSS. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery /title. Script type equals ocotext /javascript echo. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jquery/jquery 1.8.1.minjSQL /script style type equals ocotext/xoco .border class border 3px solid black /style /head body h1 style /h1 img alt equals oko heartico id equals okinamagioko src equals oko heart.jpgako / body /html. When you view the page in a browser, you end up with a page like that from figure 3 to 7, with a simple heart image on the page. However, by adding a call to the adr function to add the border class defined on the page, you end up with code like that in listing 3 to 12. Listing 3 to 12, adding a class using adr. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title jQuery /title. Script type equals ocotext/javascript echo. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com/ajax/jquery/jquery 1.8.1.minjSQL /script style type equals ocotext/xoco .border class border 3px solid black /style /head body h1 style /h1 img alt equals oko heartico id equals okinamagioko src equals oko heart.jpgako script type equals ocotext/javascript echo $document .ready function $oc# #dimagioko .adr oc# class oko oka border class oko /script /body /html. The code simply calls adr to change the class attribute to border class. In this case, there actually is no kata class attribute on the element yet, so jQuery is smart enough to just add one for you. The result ends up like Figure 3 to 8. Figure 3 to 8. Adding a class through the int. But what to do if there occurs already a class on the element? You could first retrieve the classes using int and then append another one. Or you could use the jQuery function for adding a class, called addClass. The addClass function does not interfere with any other classes that are already applied to an element, it just adds another class to it. Making the change to the code from listing 3 to 12 is as simple as changing the line $OC pound hashtag thimagioco .int OC pound classoco comma oca border classoco to $OC pound hashtag thimagioco .add class OC pound border classoco. With that simple change, the class border class will be added and you don't have to worry about removing other classes that are applied to the element. Removing a class. A companion to the addClass function, called removeClass, takes the class away from an element. Like addClass, removeClass doesn't affect other classes that are on the element, it removes only the specified class. The syntax for removeClass is like the addClass syntax. $OC pound hashtag thimagioco .removeClass OC pound border classoco. In the next chapter, you see another related function called toggleClass that adds or removes the class, depending on whether it is already applied to an element. Chapter 4, Reacting to Events with JavaScript and jQuery. In this chapter, understanding events. Using JavaScript with forms. Responding to mouse clicks and hovering. Counting characters and disabling a form field. Events are things that happen. For example, the sun rising is an event. The sun setting is an event. You can choose to react to those events. For example, when the sun rises, you might get out of bed or you might not. When the sun sets, you might turn on a light or might go to bed. When it comes to web programming, events are the things that happen in a web page. For example, a user might move the mouse over a button, click a button, or submit a form. Like the example of the sun rising, you can choose to react to the event or you can ignore it. If all you wanted to do was ignore events, then this would be a really short chapter. But you probably want to react to events, and we show you how to do so for some common scenarios. Understanding events. In general, there are 4 types of events that you'll be concerned about. Form events includes things like selecting a checkbox or submitting the form itself. Reacting to form events is one of the most common things that JavaScript programmers do. Mouse events. This can be anything from a mouse click to mouse movements on the page. That goes right, you can actually track where the mouse is on a page and react to it. Keyboard events. Things that happen through the keyboard, like a key press, are considered keyboard events. Page events. Things like the page loading or unloading are considered page events. You'll be happy to know that you've already been reacting to the page load event through the jQuery ready function. Working with forms. Speaking of jQuery, this chapter concentrates largely on using jQuery for working with events. Using jQuery saves a lot of compatibility headaches that come into play when you start trying to make your JavaScript code work across browsers. Working with forms. Previous chapters of the book show a form being created and styling that form with CSS. Now it is time to learn how to work with that form using JavaScript. A frequent way to use JavaScript with forms is to provide Validation of the form as users fill it out or before it gets submitted to the server. Adding a submit handler. jQuery includes a function that automatically watches for a form to be submitted. Listing 4:1 shows HTML for a form used earlier in the book. Weko taken the liberty of adding jQuery to the head section of the form. Listing 4:1, a simple form. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title a basic form / title. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript echo. src equals ocode : / ajax.isnet.com / ajax / jQuery / jQuery. 1.8.1.minjsico. / script. Style type equals OCO text / xoco. Form field. Clear. Both. Padding, 10px. Width, 350px. Form field label. Float, left. Width, 150px. Text align, right. Form field input. Float, right. Width, 150px. Text align, left. Hashtag submit. Book 3. Chapter 4. Reacting to events. With JavaScript and jQuery. Working with forms 243. Text align, center. /style. /head. Body. H1 a basic form /H1. HR. Form action equals OCO hashtag OCO. Field set. Legend form information /legend. Div class equals OCO form field echo. Label for equals OCO renameico name /label. Input type equals OCO text echo ID equals OCO renameico. Name equals OCO renameico. /div. Div class equals OCO form field echo. Label for equals OCMailico email address /label. Input type equals OCO text echo ID equals OCO renameico. Name equals OCMailico. /div. Div class equals OCO form field echo. Input ID equals OCO submitaco type equals OCO submitaco. Name equals OCO submitaco value equals OCO send form OCO. /div. /field set. /form. /body. /html. A page viewed in a browser looks like that in Figure 4:1. Figure 4:1. A basic web form. Right now, when you click send form nothing happens. Change that by following these steps. 1. Open your text editor. 2. In the editor, place the following code. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title a basic form /title. Script type equals OCO text /JavaScript echo. src equals ocode : / ajax.isnet.com / ajax / jQuery / jQuery. 1.8.1.minjsico. /script. Style type equals OCO text /xoco. Form field. Clear. Both. Padding, 10px. Width, 350px. Form field label. Float, left. Width, 150px. Text align, right. Form field input. Float, right. Width, 150px. Text align, left. Hashtag submit. Text align, center. /style. /head. Body. H1 a basic form /H1. HR. Form action equals OCO hashtag OCO. Field set. Legend form information /legend. Div class equals OCO form field echo. Label for equals OCO renameico name /label. Input type equals OCO text echo ID equals OCO renameico. Name equals OCO renameico. /div. Div class equals OCO form field echo. Label for equals ocmailaco email address slash. Label. Input type equals oco textico ID equals ocoernamiaco. Name equals ocmailaco. Slash div. Working with forms 245. Div class equals ocoform fieldico. Input ID equals oco submitaco type equals oco submitaco. Name equals oco submitaco value equals oco send form oco. Slash div. Slash field set. Slash form. Slash body. Slash HTML. 3. Save the form as form1.html in your document root. 4. View the page in a web browser at http://localhost/form1.html. You should see a page like the one in figure 4:1. 5. Now add the following code, just after the closing /form tag end. Before the closing /body tag. Script type equals oco text /javascriptico. $document, .ready, function. $OC pound form oco, .submit, function. Alert, OC pound you submitted the form oco. Return false. /script. 6. Save the file, again as form1.html. 7. View the page in a browser. You can also reload the page with Ctrl+R. Or Command+R if you left it open from a previous step. 8. Click Send Form. You should receive an alert like the one shown in figure 4:2. Figure 4:2. This alert confirms that the input is. You've added a submit event handler. Look at the code. $document, .ready, function. $OC pound form oco, .submit, function. Alert, OC pound you submitted the form oco. Return false. The code begins with the ready function, which you've seen before. Next. Up, you select the form by selecting all form elements on the page. If there was more than one form, you'd likely want to give the form a name or ID so that you could select the right one, but for this example, simply selecting by element works. Next up, the submit function is called and another function is created. Within it, the function oco's main task is to display an alert, which you saw. The second line within the function, return false, is interesting for forms. When you use return false in a form submit event, you essentially prevent the form from submitting to the server. Therefore, you only want to do this for specific reasons, like when the form is not valid, such as when the user has not filled out all the required fields. When you add return false, you're preventing the default action. Because the default action of the form is to submit to the server, adding return false prevents that default action from occurring. Another way to prevent the default action is with the jQuery prevent default function. You use prevent default in certain circumstances where return false doesn't do what you want, changing the JavaScript from the preceding example to use both prevent default and return false looks like this. $document, .ready, function. $OC pound form oco, .submit, function, event. Alert, OC pound you submitted the form oco. Event.prevent default. Return false. Checking for blank fields. Though we include an entire chapter on validation, Book 6, Chapter 2. Here we provide a sneak peek at validating a form, at least checking for blank fields. Consider the form from earlier in the chapter and shown in figure 4:1. Say that the name field was required. That means the user needs to fill something out in order for the form to be sent to the server. You can change the JavaScript to make sure that the field has been filled in. Recall that the ID of the name field is OC pound username echo. jQuery can select that pretty easily, and then IDECO is a matter of getting the value for the field. For that, You can use jQuery OCO's val function. Finally, all you need to do is put the whole thing in an if statement to make sure the value is no empty. Monitoring mouse events 247. The code looks like this. $document.ready function. $OC_form_OCO.submit function event. If $OC#hashtag username echo.val equals OC#OCO. Alert, OC#name cannot be blank echo. Event.prevent default. Return false. You can try this out by replacing the JavaScript from the earlier example with that code. If you attempt to submit the form without filling anything out, in the name field, you'll receive an alert like the one in Figure 4-3. Figure 4-3. Basic. Validation. This form validation is very basic. For instance, you could just place a single empty space in that field and it would be valid. In Book 6, you see much more about JavaScript validation and server-side validation too. Monitoring mouse events. You can watch for and react to mouse events with JavaScript. This section looks at how to do both. Capturing mouse clicks. A common thing to do is capture mouse click events with JavaScript. For example, when a person clicks on an image or clicks a form element, you can react to it to load a different image or select other form elements. Imagine Yakov set up a car shop where people can get their cars customized with a few upgrades. You specialize in adding fog lights, leather trim, and DVD players. People can come to your website and choose a trim level. Figure 4-4 shows a sample page for where users select their options. Monitoring mouse events. Figure 4-4. Choosing a. If people choose the deluxe package, the form should check all the extra options checkboxes. If people choose the plain package, all the options should uncheck. Finally, if people choose an individual option in the extra options list, then the custom package should be checked. This can all be accomplished with a few lines of JavaScript and jQuery. Listing 4-2 shows the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create the desired behavior. Listing 4-2, creating a custom form. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title a basic form / title. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript OCO. src equals ocode : / ajax.asnet.com / ajax / jQuery / jQuery. 1.8.1.minjSOCO. / script. Style type equals OCO text / XOCO. Form field. Clear. Both. Padding, 10px. Width, 350px. Form field label. Float, left. Width, 150px. Monitoring mouse events 249. Text align, right. Form field input. Float, right. Width, 150px. Text align, left. Hashtag submit. Text align, center. /style. /head. Body. H1 a basic form / H1. HR. Form action equals OCO hashtag OCO. Field set. Legend car trim and package information / legend. div class equals OCO form field OCO. div package / div. Input ID equals OCO plain OCO type equals OCO OCO name equals OCO trim OCO. Value equals OCO plain OCO. Label for equals OCO plain / label. Input ID equals OCO delucky OCO type equals OCO OCO name equals OCO trim OCO. Value equals OCO delucky OCO. Label for equals OCO delucky OCO deluxe / label. Input ID equals OCO custom OCO type equals OCO OCO name equals OCO trim OCO. Value equals oko custom oko. Label for equals oko custom slash label. Slash div. Div class equals oko form field echo. Div extra option slash div. Input type equals oko checkbox oko ID equals oko foglights. Name equals okuptionoko. Value equals oko foglights. Label for equals oko foglights fog light slash label. Input type equals oko checkbox oko ID equals oko leatheroko. Name equals okuptionoko. Value equals oko leatheroko. Label for equals oko leatheroko leather slash label. Input type equals oko checkbox oko ID equals okod dako. Name equals okuptionoko. Value equals okod dako. Label for equals okod dako dvd slash label. Slash div. Div class equals oko form field echo. Input ID equals oko submitako. Type equals oko submitako. Name equals oko submitako. Value equals oko send form oko. Slash div. Slash field set. Slash form. Script type equals oko text slash javascript echo. Document. Ready. Function. OC pound input name equals oko trimoko oko. Click. Function. Event. If $this val equals OC pound lucky echo. Monitoring mouse events. OC pound input name equals okuptionoko oko. True. OC pound check it oko true. Else if $this val equals OC pound plain echo. OC pound input name equals okuptionoko oko. True. OC pound check it oko false. OC pound input name equals okuptionoko oko. Click. Function. Event. OC pound hashtag custom oko. True. OC pound check it oko comma oko kekidoko. Slash script. Slash body. Slash HTML. Notice that the cascading style sheet, CSS, is the same from that of listing. 4:1 The HTML is straightforward, insofar as it sets up the form that you see. In figure 4:4, the JavaScript is where things get interesting. The first thing the JavaScript does is put everything into the ready function. You've seen that numerous times already, no need for further explanation there. The second thing in the JavaScript is a selector that is attached to the click event. This selector is a bit more complex than those you've seen previously. OC pound input name equals okatrimoko oko. That selector looks for all input elements on the page but then uses a filter to obtain only those input elements that have the name of OC pound trimoko. In this case, those elements correspond to the radio buttons on the form. Notice here the use of two different quotation marks. The overall selector is enclosed in double quotes while the word trim is enclosed in single quotes. You do this because otherwise jQuery would get quite confused and think you meant to close the selector. The selector is chained to the click function that handles click events. Within the click function, the value of the item that was clicked is examined. If $this val equals OC pound lucky echo. That echo is done through the $this selector and the val function. If that value is OC pound lucky echo, then all the checkboxes are checked with this line. OC pound input name equals okuptionoko oko. True. OC pound check it oko true. That line again uses a selector and filter, but this time gets all the check boxes with the name OC pound option oko. The selected checkboxes are then checked, thanks to the IDRA function that the preceding chapter explains. Monitoring mouse events 251. An else if is then used to see if the plain radio button was selected. Else if $this val equals OC pound plain echo. If that radio button is selected, then the OC option OCO checkboxes are unchecked. $OC pound input name equals OCOPtion OCO dot adverb OC pound check it OCO false. After that click event handler is closed, another one is created. This time, the handler is connected to the checkboxes. $OC pound input name equals OCOPtion OCO dot click function event. If someone clicks on one of the checkboxes, whether to check it or uncheck it, you need to enable the OC pound custom OCO radio button. That OCO is accomplished with this line. $OC pound hashtag custom OCO dot adverb OC pound check it OCO comma OCO check it OCO. You can try this out with the code from listing 422. When you select Deluxe, the checkboxes will automatically check, and if you select Plain, the OCO uncheck. Clicking any of the checkboxes individually results in the custom radio button becoming selected. While this example shows how to work with forms and the click event, you can actually attach a click event handler to any element on the page. See http://api.jquery.com/click for more information on the click event handler in jQuery. Watching mouse movements. There are several interesting items surrounding the movement of the mouse or pointing device. For instance, you can change an element when the mouse hovers over it or when the mouse leaves the element. This section shows a hover event handler, which handles both the hover over and when the mouse leaves the element. You can emulate the hover event handler through CSS, although support for the CSS hover pseudo class is not available on older browsers. Listing 423 shows the HTML for this example. Monitoring mouse events. Listing 423, creating 3 boxes in HTML. Doc type HTML. HTML. Head. Title hover / title. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript OCO. src equals ocode://ajax.asnet.com /ajax/jquery/jquery. 1.8.1.minjSOCO. /script. Style type equals OCO text / XOCO. Box. Margin, 50px. Padding, 30px. Width, 50px. Border, 3px solid black. Color box. Background color, #avocab. /style. /head. Body. H1 hover /H1. HR. BR/. Span class equals OCOBox OCO box 1 /span. Span class equals OCOBox OCO box 2 /span. Span class equals OCOBox OCO box 3 /span. /body. /HTML. Pages viewed in a browser look like the one in Figure 425. Figure 425. HTML for a monitoring mouse events 253. For the hover effect, you add JavaScript to make it so that when a box is hovered over with the mouse, the background color changes. To create this effect, the following JavaScript is employed within the page, at its usual location just above the closing /body tag. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript OCO. Document, .ready, function. OC pound .box OCO, .hover. / hover over. Function. This, .add class, OC pound color box OCO. / hover out. Function. This, remove class, OC pound color box OCO. This code places everything in the jQuery ready function, as usual. Next. All items with the class of OC pound box OCO are selected and the hover function is chained to them. $OC pound .box OCO, .hover. The hover function takes two arguments, what to do when the hover is in effect and what to do when the hover is done. So each of those functions is created. The first one adds a class called OC_colorBoxOco, which merely changes the background color to a shade of gray. The CSS for that was in listing 4 to 3. The second function, applied when the mouse moves out of the selected element, removes the class OC_colorBoxOco, as shown here. / hover over function $this.add class OC_colorBoxOco / hover out function $this.remove class OC_colorBoxOco. The result, with the mouse hovering over the element labeled box 2, is shown in figure 4 to 6. The box turns gray, #abacab. Book 3. Reacting to keyboard events. Figure 4 to 6. Hovering over and reacting to keyboard events. Just as you can react to mouse events, so too can you react to keyboard events. Things like watching when a certain key is pressed, or more generically, just counting the number of times the keys are pressed, can all be done with JavaScript. This section looks at two examples of JavaScript to react to keyboard events. Counting characters. If you've used Twitter, you've seen an example of a text box that counts down while you type. Many contact forms also include similar functions, where you can type your message only up to a certain number of characters. Listing 4 to 4 shows some example HTML for creating a small text box, called a text area in HTML parlance. Listing 4 to 4, creating an HTML text area. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title hover / title. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript. src equals ocode : / ajax.asnect.com / ajax / jquery / jquery. 1.8.1.minjsico / script / head body h1 key up / h1 hr form action equals OCO #OCO text area rows equals OCO 10 OCO calls equals OCO 20 OCO ID equals OCO messageaco name equals OCO messageaco / text area. Reacting to keyboard events 255. P characters remaining, span ID equals ACO remaining GACO 50 / span / P / form / body / HTML. Pages viewed in a browser look like figure 4 to 7. Figure 4 to 7. A small text area for adding JavaScript to count characters looks like this. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript. $document .ready function. Var max characters equals 50. $OC pound #messageaco .on OC pound keyupico function. Var current val equals $OC pound #messageaco .val .length. Var total remaining equals max characters, current val. $OC pound #remaining GACO .text, total remaining. / script. This JavaScript first sets a variable with the maximum number of characters allowed, 50. Then the element with the ID of OC pound messageaco is selected. A event handler is attached to the selected element. The event handler is attached with the on function, which is a generic event handler. The event handlers you've seen so far are all so common that the folks at jQuery created specific functions to handle them. So things like submit, click, and hover all have their own events. However, all other events are attached using the on function. The first argument to the on function is the name of the event to watch for. In This case, you want to watch for the OC pound key Yupiko event to know when a key is pressed and then released. Reacting to keyboard events. The first thing you do once the key up event fires is to count the number of characters in the text field. That is accomplished with this line of code. Var current val equals $OC pound hashtag message echo .val .length. Now you know the maximum characters allowed, 50, and you know the current number of characters in the field. Next up, math. You need to subtract the current number of characters in the variable current val from the maximum allowed characters in the variable max characters. The result will be placed in a new variable called total remaining. Var total remaining equals max characters, current val. The last thing to do is place that value into the span element that shows the characters remaining. $OC pound hashtag remaining gakko .text, total remaining. Now when you type into the text area, the number of characters remaining counts down. Figure 4 to 8 shows an example. Figure 4 to 8. Showing remaining. Now you know how they do this on Twitter. However, if you type a whole bunch into the form, you'll notice that you can actually continue typing past the 50 characters. The counter will go into negative numbers, see figure 4 to 9. Reacting to keyboard events 257. Figure 4 to 9. Entering characters past the, because you end up checking the number of characters in your PHP program. Anyway, it is not the end of the world if a user goes past the maximum allowed. You can also prevent users from submitting the form. We tell you how to do those things. Book 6. Preventing character input. You can use JavaScript to disable a form field. For example, many sites use a shipping and billing address combination whereby the user clicks a check box to indicate that the billing address is the same as the shipping address. Listing 4 to 5 shows an HTML snippet for such a page. Listing 4 to 5, a shipping info page. Type HTML. HTML. Head. Title prevent / title. Script type equals OCO text / JavaScript OCO. src equals ocode : / ajax.asnet.com / ajax / jquery / jquery. 1.8.1.minjSQL. /script. /head. Body. h1 shopping info / h1. hr. Form action equals OCO hashtag OCO. Billing address same as shipping address. Input type equals OCO checkbox OCO name equals OCO billing address OCO. ID equals OCO billing address OCO. br/. Street address. Input class equals OCO badge type equals OCO text OCO name equals OCO street OCO ID equals OCO street OCO. br/. City. Input class equals OCO badge type equals OCO text OCO name equals OCO city OCO ID equals OCO city OCO. /form. /body. /HTML. A page viewed in a browser looks like that in figure 4 to 10. Figure 4 to 10. A snippet. For a billing. In reality, a billing info page would capture more information, like the state and zip code for starters, but this gives you a bit of an idea of the type of page hookery setting up for this example. Adding JavaScript to disable those text boxes looks like this. $document. .ready, function. $OC pound hashtag billing address OCO, .click, function. If, $OC pound hashtag billing address OCO, .agree, OC pound check it OCO, equals. OC pound check it OCO. $OC pound .badge .val, OC pound OCO. $OC pound .badge agree. OC pound disabled echo, OK disabled echo. Else if, $OC pound hashtag billing address oko, .adr, OC pound check adoko, equals. Undefined. $OC pound .badrocko, .remove adr, OC pound disabled echo. Reacting to keyboard events 259. The code begins with the ready function, of course. After that, a click event handler is added to the checkbox. If the billing address checkbox is checked, then the values from the form fields are cleared and those form fields are disabled. If the billing address checkbox is unchecked, then the disabled attribute is removed, thanks to the remove adr function. Note in this example the use of classes on the text fields to be disabled. Using classes, called OC_badrocko for this example, makes it easy to group them. For a jQuery selector. Gracias por escuchar audiobook Scarlo.